right in the heart of modern Athens. With all the traffic and the constant buzz of city life, there's this incredible 15-acre oasis. It's all dense greenery and these beautiful winding paths. This is the National Garden, and it feels like a completely different world from the concrete right outside its gates.
This place is just a perfect example of this 19th century idea called rus in urbi. It's Latin for countryside in the city. The whole point was to create a natural escape, a spot for fresh air, right in the middle of all the urban chaos. And I mean, just look at this path. You can really feel that original idea coming through.
But here's the thing you got to remember. This garden wasn't originally for everyone. It was the private playground of Queen Amalia, started way back in 1839. So that leads us to the big question, right? Can a space that was designed almost 200 years ago for royalty, can it still work for the average person living in a bustling city today?
To answer that, we really need to understand its incredible journey. Experts on historic sites actually call gardens like this living monuments, which is perfect. It really captures how this space has grown and changed over all this time.
So, its story kicks off in 1839 as this super private royal escape. By 1854, the main design is pretty much locked in. But the huge turning point, that comes in 1923, when it finally opens up to the public. And then, much more recently in 2011, it gets official recognition from the Greek state as a historic site, making sure it's protected for good.
And this just brilliantly shows you that original vision. This is the 1854 plan from the French designer. You can see all the classic signs of that 19th century European style, right? You got these intricate winding paths, thick clusters of trees, and then these open clearings, all designed to feel like you've stumbled into some perfect natural landscape.
Now, this is what's really, really cool. Let's do a little comparison. On the left, you have that 1854 plan. On the right, a modern map. Look closely. The main paths, the big open spaces, the whole vibe of the garden's layout, it's been amazingly well preserved. That historical character isn't an accident, it's the result of some really careful conservation work.
Okay, so we know the history is intact, but why do people come here now? To figure that out, we're going to dig into some data from a recent survey of over 200 visitors. We want to understand what makes this historic space so appealing in the 21st century.
And the number one reason? By a long shot, just seeking tranquility. Almost 40% of visitors are there for a bit of peace and quiet. So that whole countryside in the city idea, yeah, it's still working big time. After that, people come for exercise, to take their kids for a walk, and just to hang out with friends.
And where do people spend their time once they're in the park? Well, the survey shows it's a mix of things. People are drawn to the beautiful open lawns for the views, for sure, but they also head to specific attractions, like the small zoo, which has these really unique Cretan goats.
This chart breaks it down for us even more. The small zoo and bird enclosure is the single biggest draw. We're talking almost 37% of visitors. This is a more modern feature, and it's clearly a huge part of the park's appeal today. At the same time, you've got almost a quarter of visitors who are just there to wander and see the whole garden. And of course, the playground is another hotspot for families.
All right, so we know why they come and where they go. But how happy are they? What's the final score? It's time to look at the people's verdict, what they absolutely love about the garden, and, where they think it could do a little better.
Okay, this is fascinating. When you ask people what they love most, the top answer is the planting, the historic, dense, beautiful greenery itself. And right after that, the tranquility that the plants create. So the core elements of its 19th century design are the exact things modern visitors value the most. How cool is that?
But on the flip side of that coin, the complaints are almost all about modern day-to-day management issues. The biggest concerns are a feeling of not enough security, followed by cleanliness, and then not having enough park furniture like benches or water fountains. These are the real-world challenges of running a popular public space.
So here's the visitor scorecard in a nutshell. The hits are the timeless, core things about the garden: its historic beauty, its peaceful vibe, and its attractions. The misses are all about the daily nuts and bolts of management: security, cleaning, and amenities. It's a really clear divide, isn't it? So, when you balance out all the hits and misses, what's the final score? A solid 7.1 out of 10. And that number is actually really important. It tells us that even with those very real operational issues, the fundamental, positive experience of being in the garden is just so strong that it wins out in the end.
All of this brings us right back to our big question from the beginning. How does a park like this stay so relevant? Well, when you put the history together with what modern visitors are telling us, a pretty clear recipe for a timeless park starts to emerge.
It's really a four-part formula, and it perfectly addresses that tension we saw in the data. First, you've got to protect that historical character. It's the park's greatest asset, the #1 thing people love. Second, you have to nail the maintenance and security. This hits the biggest complaints head-on. Without this, that historic magic gets ruined. Third, you have to serve modern needs, like adding playgrounds and enough seating. It shows that history doesn't have to be stuck in the past. And finally, you have to listen to your visitors. That's how you keep the balance between heritage and modern life just right.
You know, the researchers who conducted this whole survey, they summed it up perfectly. They found that historical parks can protect their heritage and, at the very same time, meet the needs of people today. And when you do both, that's when these places get a truly timeless value. It's not a choice between the past and the present. It's about blending them together.
So, the National Garden of Athens answers our question with a big, loud yes. A park for a queen can absolutely work for a modern city dweller. And it makes you think, doesn't it? What about the historic parks in your city? What's their secret to staying timeless?